I won't call them misconceptions, but in some cases they might just be marketing tools, you know, because usually people who come off the grid on certain extreme levels, they turn around and sell you something to compensate for you not being able to have this or have that, you know. But hey, you know, things like cacao, cocoa. You know, I grew up with that in my backyard. And where we grew up, where cocoa grows, you know, the native people, we eat the fruit, we eat the pulp off of the bean. It's a bean. That's all it is. It's a bean. We eat the fruit off of the bean, off of just the pulp. And normally, you know, if you're talking about fair trade and ethical eating, all seeds need to go back to the earth. They need to regenerate themselves. So when we eating the seed, we're terminating the life, you know, of that particular species. But specifically the cacao, the cocoa bean, it is very, very high in fat, a very tough, saturated fat that is very difficult for the body to break down. I mean, I remember the days when you know, we'll buy cocoa butter, which come from the cacao bean. And usually on the label it was says for external use only. You know, and I know to extract the cocoa butter, the fat from the cacao bean, it has to be cooked, it has to be heated to break that down. So they normally would boil the cacao beans and skim the fat off the top, and they sell you that as cocoa butter. But because they took all the gusto out, because the gusto in these foods are in the fat and the grease, they took all the gusto out, then the chocolate or cocoa business start adding milk fat back in and sugar to come up with those killer chocolate products that we have enjoyed. But now the raw food pirates that made it down to South America and came up with all of these big bags of cacao beans, you know, which I don't see how they can call it fair trade, you know, when they're not educating the native people there about the value of their cacao so they can demand it as well, because the price they get up north for this cacao, the native people cannot buy it. But they sit and they would dine and watch these native people heat buckets of starch, rice, and bread, you know, even stuff that had been brought in by the U.S. CARE, the U.S. government agency, U.S. aid, CARE, that bring in, you know, loads of powdered milk and dried cheese and rice and flour, all the starch that we know is not healthy for those people. But we're pirating their cacao bean. So we're not going to stop and tell them, don't eat starch like that, you know, eat cacao beans, because they can't afford it based on the market demand that we have up here. So it's not fair trade.